I'm infertile, but I can work, the giant mail-order bride said with tears in her eyes. Cowboy said, Darlin, don't bite unless. I'm infertile, but I can work. The words shattered the Montana silence like breaking glass, a confession from a giant mail-order bride who'd traveled 200 miles, carrying shame heavier than her 6'1" frame, spoken to a cowboy who'd never asked for perfection, only partnership. Clara Matheson stood in the doorway of Jesse Thornton's modest ranch house, her wedding dress still smelling of train smoke and desperate hope. At 29 years old, with shoulders broad enough to break wild horses and hands scarred from blacksmith fires, she was magnificent, a Viking warrior wrapped in white lace. But her pale green eyes were flooding with tears that carved clean paths through the dust on her cheeks. I'm infertile, she said again, her voice cracking on the word she'd whispered to herself 1,000 times in shame. The fever when I was 16, the doctor said I'd never... She couldn't finish. Her massive hands twisted the fabric of her dress. But I can work. I can train horses, mend fences, handle cattle. I can earn my keep. I won't be useless just because I can't give you. Jesse Thornton, the 36-year-old cowboy rancher of Copper Ridge, felt something crack open in his chest. He stood barely 5'10", lean and weathered, with grey threading through his dark hair and a quiet intensity that made horses trust him. He'd been told once he was too soft, too gentle, too broken himself to be a real man. This giant, mail-order bride, this woman who looked like she could carry the world, was offering him her labor because she believed her womb was all that mattered. The sunset streaming through the window painted her in gold and shadow. She was trembling despite her size, waiting for him to send her back east, waiting for rejection, waiting to be told she wasn't enough. But Jesse Thornton took one step closer, then another, until he had to tilt his head back slightly to meet those devastated green eyes. Darlin, he said softly, and his voice carried something that made her breath catch, not pity, not disappointment, but something that sounded dangerously like desire. I don't bite unless you ask me real nice. The shock on her face was worth everything. She'd been braced for anger, for annulment papers, for cold dismissal. Not this, not a man looking at her like she was still wanted, still desired. Still enough, you... What? Her voice was barely a whisper. His calloused hand reached up and up to cup her jaw. You heard me? The tears fell harder now, but different, confused, hopeful, terrified. I don't understand. Clara's whole body was shaking. I just told you I can't give you children. Ever. I'm broken, Jesse. Every man in Ohio said so. 3 engagements ended the moment they found out. And I'm what? He didn't move his hand from her face. His thumb brushed away a tear. Supposed to throw you out? Send you back? Tell you you're not good enough? His voice dropped lower. Clara, look at me. She did. And what she saw in his dark brown eyes made her knees weak. I didn't marry you for your womb, Jesse said. I married you because your letters made me laugh for the first time in 3 years. Because you wrote about training horses like they were your children, and you loved every stubborn one of them. Because you told me the truth about everything except this. And I'm guessing that's because you were scared I'd be like every other fool who couldn't see past one thing. But children are a blessing if they come. But they're not the only blessing. He finally dropped his hand, and she felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. You want to know why I ordered a mail-order bride? Why I didn't court any of the women in Copper Ridge? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Because I'm deaf in my left ear. He said it flat, matter of fact, but she heard the old wound underneath. Stallion kicked me when I was 22. I can't hear thunder coming from that side, can't hear a rattlesnake if it's on my left, can't hear whispers or sweet nothings unless you're on my right side. His jaw tightened. Sarah Pembroke was going to marry me, until she found out. Said she couldn't risk having deaf children. Said I was damaged goods. Clara's breath stopped. Jesse, so you tell me, Darlin, am I broken too? Should you send me back? There was no bitterness in his voice, only a terrible, vulnerable honesty. Or maybe we're both just people who got dealt a hard hand, and we can either fold or play it out together. She stared at him. this quiet cowboy who just laid himself bare to make her feel less alone. The evening light caught the silver in his hair, the lines around his eyes that spoke of hard years and harder lessons. He wasn't perfect. Neither was she. Maybe that was the point. "I don't think you're broken," she whispered. "Then stop thinking you are." The silence between them hummed with possibility. Outside, horses nickered in the corral. The smell of prairie grass and leather drifted through the open door. Somewhere down the hill, a ranch hand was singing in German. Clara took a shaky breath. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Be wanted anyway." Jesse smiled then, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "Lucky for you, I'm a patient teacher." He held out his hand. "Now, are you going to stand in that doorway all night, or are you going to come be my wife?" She looked at his hand, smaller than hers, scarred from years of ranch work, steady and sure. She looked at his face, at the acceptance there, the desire, the quiet strength that had nothing to do with size or perfection. Clara Matheson put her hand in Jesse Thornton's hand and stepped across the threshold into a life she'd never believed she deserved. The bedroom was simple, rough pine furniture, a handmade quilt in blue and white, a single oil lamp casting warm shadows on the walls. Clara stood just inside the door, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Jesse closed the door behind them with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the quiet. "I should tell you," she said quickly, the words tumbling out before courage failed her. I'm not experienced." Jesse turned from the lamp and something in his expression softened even further. "Clara, we don't have to do anything tonight except sleep or talk. Or just breathe in the same room." He moved to the window, giving her space. "There's no rush. We have the rest of our lives." But that phrase, "the rest of our lives," made her throat tight. Because for the first time, she believed it might be true. That she might actually have a future here with this man who looked at her like she was precious instead of defective. "I want to," she said, and was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I want you to know that even though I can't, that my body can't," she struggled to find the words, "I can still be a wife to you. In every other way." Jesse turned back to her, and there was something fierce in his eyes now. "Listen to me very carefully." He crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her, so close she could smell saddle leather and soap and something uniquely him. "I don't want you to perform for me. I don't want you to prove anything. I want you, Clara, the woman who writes about horses like poetry, who's strong enough to intimidate every man in 3 counties, who's scared right now but brave enough to stand here anyway." "I'm not brave," she whispered. "I'm terrified. Being terrified and doing it anyway, that's what brave is." His hand came up to her face again, and this time she leaned into it, starved for gentleness. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "When's the last time someone touched you with kindness?" The question broke something in her. "My mother. Before she died. I was 15, 13 years. 13 years of being untouchable, too big, too much, too wrong. After the fever, after the doctors said, people looked at me different, like I was cursed. And then I just got bigger and stronger and more beautiful." Jesse finished. "More capable? More everything most people wish they could be?" She let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. "That's not what they said, because they were small people threatened by your size." He took her hand, her large, scarred, capable hand, and pressed it to his chest. She could feel his heartbeat steady and strong. "You feel that? That's me being absolutely certain I married the right woman." Clara's fingers curled into his shirt. "You don't know me yet. What if you change your mind? What if in a month or a year you realize you want—" "I know what I want." He covered her hand with his. "I want morning coffee with someone who'll tell me when I'm being stubborn. I want to watch you with the horses, because the way you move around them is like watching someone speak a language I'm still learning. I want to hear about your day and tell you about mine and build something that's ours." He paused. "And yes, Clara, I want to touch you and be touched by you, but not because it's some obligation. Because I find you absolutely, completely captivating." "How?" The word came out broken. How can you possibly? He kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was certain and deep and full of everything he'd been trying to say. Clara froze for a heartbeat, shocked, and then something inside her that had been locked away for 13 years burst open. She kissed him back with all the loneliness and longing and desperate hope she'd been carrying. Her hands came up to his shoulders, and yes, she was taller, and yes, she was bigger, but somehow it didn't feel wrong. It felt like pieces fitting together in a way that made sense only to them. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Jessie's eyes were dark with desire, but there was tenderness there too. "Still think I'm lying about wanting you?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Good." He started to unbutton his shirt, and she realized her hands were shaking again. "Hey, Clara, look at me." She did. "We go at your pace. You say stop, we stop. You say slower, we go slower. This is ours. Nobody else's expectations matter here. What if I disappoint you?" "Impossible." He shrugged off his shirt, and she saw the rancher's body underneath, lean muscle from hard work, a scar across his ribs, another on his shoulder. "Not perfect, real. What if I disappoint you?" She reached out tentatively, her fingertips brushing his chest. He inhaled sharply, and she froze. "Did I hurt you?" "No." His voice was rough. "Opposite of hurt. Clara, you have no idea what your touch does to me." "Show me," she whispered. And he did. They moved together in lamplight and shadow, two people learning each other's landscapes. Clara had expected it to feel awkward. Her size, her inexperience, the weight of everything she couldn't give him. But Jessie touched her like she was exactly what he'd been searching for. He traced the muscles in her arms with something like reverence. He kissed the calluses on her palms. He told her she was beautiful, until she almost believed it. And when it was over, when they lay tangled together in sheets that smelled like lavender and new beginnings, Clara pressed her face against his shoulder and cried, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being wanted, of being chosen, of being enough exactly as she was. Jessie held her through it, his hand stroking her hair, his lips pressed to her forehead. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you, darling. I'm sorry," she managed between sobs. "I don't know why because you've been carrying this alone for too long." His arms tightened around her. "But you're not alone anymore. You understand? Whatever comes, we face it together." She nodded against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Outside, the Montana night was full of sounds. Crickets, distant coyotes, wind in the grass. Inside, two broken people had just become something stronger than either of them alone. Clara finally pulled back enough to look at him. His face was soft in the lamplight, peaceful in a way that made her chest ache. "Jessie? Thank you. For what? For not biting?" She managed a watery smile. "Unless asked real nice." He laughed, a genuine warm sound that filled the room. "Well, now the night's still young. If you wanted to ask nice." She swatted his chest, but she was smiling too. Really smiling. The kind of smile that came from deep inside, from a place she'd thought was dead. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. Two people who'd been told they weren't enough, discovering that together. They were everything. But outside the window, in the darkness beyond the lamplight, the real challenges of their marriage were just beginning. Because Copper Ridge, Montana, was a small town with long memories and rigid rules, and a childless marriage, especially one between a barren woman and a rancher who needed heirs, was something the town matriarch would not allow to stand unchallenged. The first week of marriage passed like a dream Clara was afraid to wake from. Jessie showed her the ranch, 300 acres of rolling Montana grassland, a stable with 12 horses, cattle that dotted the hills like moving shadows. He introduced her to Dutch, the grizzled German ranch hand, who looked at her height and grunted, "Good! Someone who can actually reach the high beams in the barn." And to Tommy, a 20-year-old with sandy hair and earnest eyes, who blushed whenever Clara spoke to him. Clara threw herself into the work with fierce determination. She broke a wild mare that had bucked off 3 men. She repaired fences, hauled water, and could lift feed sacks that made Dutch shake his head in amazement. At night, she and Jessie would collapse into bed, exhausted and happy, trading stories about their day like they'd been doing it for years instead of days. But on Sunday, everything changed. "We should go to church," Jessie said over breakfast, and Clara's stomach dropped. She'd been dreading this. Church meant town. Town meant people. People meant judgment. Do we have to? She pushed eggs around her plate. "I could stay here, get started on that fence repair in the south pasture." "Clara." Jessie reached across the table and took her hand. "You can't hide forever. Besides, they need to meet my wife properly. Not just hear rumors." What kind of rumors? But she already knew. In small towns, everything was a rumor. The fact that she was tall, that she'd arrived as a mail-order bride, that she worked like a man, and eventually, inevitably, that she couldn't have children. "The kind that die when people actually meet you," Jessie said firmly. "Trust me." So Clara put on her Sunday dress, the nicest one she owned, though it still strained across her shoulders and hung too short at the ankles. She braided her dark blonde hair and stood in front of the mirror, trying to make herself smaller, softer, more acceptable. Jessie appeared behind her in the mirror. "You look beautiful. I look like I'm wearing my little sister's dress. You look like my wife. And I'm proud to walk into that church with you." He kissed her neck. "Come on, let's get this over with." The church was a simple white building on the edge of Copper Ridge, its steeple pointing toward endless Montana sky. Clara could feel eyes on them the moment they stepped through the door. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Women whispered behind their hands. Men stared openly, taking in her height, her build, the way she had to duck slightly to avoid the doorframe. Jessie's hand tightened on hers. "Smile," he murmured. "Show them you're not afraid." But she was afraid, terrified, because she'd lived this scene before in Ohio, in Minnesota, in every place that had eventually rejected her. They found a pew in the back. Clara sat carefully, trying to take up less space. Her shoulders curved forward. An older woman in the pew ahead turned around, her sharp blue eyes assessing Clara from head to toe. "So you're the mail-order bride," the woman said. It wasn't a question. Her voice carried across the quiet church. "I'm Evangeline Calloway. I've known Jessie since he was in short pants." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We were all so surprised when he sent away for a wife. There are plenty of good Christian women right here in Copper Ridge." "Mrs. Calloway," Jessie said, and there was a warning in his tone. "This is my wife, Clara. I'd appreciate you treating her with respect." "Of course, dear boy. Of course." Mrs. Calloway's gaze sharpened. "Tell me, Clara dear, do you come from a large family? Brothers and sisters?" The question landed like a punch. Clara knew exactly where this was going. "I was an only child. My parents died when I was young." "Oh, how tragic. And no other family? No children of your own?" The woman's voice was syrup-sweet and venomous. "I only ask because family is so important out here. A ranch needs heirs, you understand. Strong boys to carry on the Thornton name." The church had gone completely silent. Everyone was listening now. Clara felt her face burning, her throat closing. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading. The moment her secret would become public shame. "We haven't been married a week," Jessie said coldly. "I don't think that's an appropriate question, Mrs. Calloway. I'm simply saying that at your age, Jessie, you can't afford to wait. You need sons. And if your wife can't provide them, that's enough." Jessie stood, pulling Clara with him. "We're leaving." But Clara was frozen, Mrs. Calloway's words echoing in her head. If your wife can't provide them. How did she know? Had someone told her? Or was this just the inevitable question that every childless woman faced? "Jessie," Mrs. Calloway called after them. "I'm only thinking of your future. If she's barren." The word hung in the air like a curse. Clara heard gasps, whispers exploding around them. Jessie's face went white with rage, but Clara was already moving, pushing past him, past the staring faces, out the church door, into blinding sunlight. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only run. She made it to the wagon before her knees gave out. She leaned against the wheel, her whole body shaking, that word ringing in her ears. "Barren, barren, barren. Clara." Jesse was there, his hands on her shoulders. Don't listen to her. She's a bitter old woman who, how did she know? Clara's voice was raw. I didn't tell anyone except you. How did she know? She doesn't know. She's fishing, trying to start trouble because that's what she does. Jesse tried to turn her around, but she wouldn't budge. Clara, look at me, please. This is what it's going to be like, isn't it? She finally faced him, and his expression crumbled at the devastation in her eyes. Every Sunday, every town gathering, people whispering, people asking, people waiting to see if I'll give you a child and judging me when I don't. I don't care what they think, but I do. The words burst out of her. Because I've lived this before, Jesse. I've watched people's faces change when they find out. I've heard the pity, the disgust, the certainty that I'm being punished by God for some sin. Tears were streaming down her face now. And you say you don't care now, but what about in a year? 5 years? 10 years? When all your friends have children and grandchildren, and your house is empty, and you realize you could have had that with someone else. Stop! He grabbed her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. Stop putting words in my mouth. Stop deciding what I'm going to feel. I chose you, Clara. I choose you. And I will keep choosing you every damn day until you believe it. But she's right. You need heirs. The ranch will be fine. We'll figure it out. There are options. Adoption, taking in orphans like Tommy. Hell, we could leave the whole place to Dutch for all I care. His voice cracked. What I need is you. Not your womb. Not some theoretical children. You. Behind them, people were starting to file out of the church. Clara could feel their eyes, hear their whispers. Mrs. Calloway stood on the church steps, watching with satisfaction. I want to go home, Clara whispered. Please, Jesse, I just want to go home. He helped her into the wagon without another word. Dutch and Tommy had already left with their own wagon. It was just the two of them on the road back to the ranch, the silence heavy with everything unsaid. They were a mile from town when Tommy came galloping up on horseback, his face urgent. Mr. Thornton, Dutch sent me. One of the mares is foaling, but something's wrong. She's been laboring for hours and the foal won't come, Jesse cursed. Which mare? Sable, the black one Mrs. Clara broke last week. Clara's head snapped up. Sable, the wild mare who'd finally trusted her, who'd eaten sugar from Clara's palm just yesterday. Drive faster, she told Jesse. They found Dutch in the stable, his face grim. The mare was on her side, flanks heaving, eyes rolling with pain and fear. Clara was out of the wagon before it fully stopped, running to the stall. I've tried everything, Dutch said. The foal's positioned wrong. Breach, I think. She's been trying for 3 hours. Much longer, and we'll lose them both. Clara knelt in the straw beside Sable, her hands gentle on the mare's sweat-soaked neck. Hey, beautiful girl, hey, I'm here. The mare's eye focused on her, and some of the panic eased. We're going to help you. I promise. She looked up at Jesse. I need to reach in, try to turn the foal. But I've only done it once before, and that was with a cow. I could make it worse. You're the only one with hands small enough and who she trusts, Dutch said bluntly. Without you, they both die. Clara took a shaky breath. Here it was, the bitter irony. She couldn't bring life into the world through her own body, but she could save this life. She could be useful in the one way that mattered on a ranch. She rolled up her sleeves. Hold her head. Keep her calm. For the next 20 minutes, Clara worked with careful intensity, her arm inside the mare, feeling for the foal's position, gently, carefully trying to turn it. Sable screamed and thrashed. Jesse and Tommy held her down. Dutch talked her through it, his voice steady, and Clara prayed to a God she wasn't sure listened to women like her, that her barren hands could bring this baby safely into the world. I've got it, she breathed. The head's coming. One more push, girl. One more. Sable gave a final mighty effort, and the foal slid free in a rush of fluid and membrane. Clara cleared its nose and mouth, and after a heart-stopping moment, it took a gasping breath. It's a filly, Clara said, and her voice broke on the words. She's alive. The foal was perfect, dark as midnight, with a white star on her forehead. Within minutes, she was struggling to stand on wobbly legs, instinct driving her toward her mother's milk. Clara sat back in the straw, covered in blood and birth fluids, watching mother and daughter together. And something inside her shattered and reformed all at once. Jessie knelt beside her. "You saved them both. I know." She turned to look at him, and her eyes were clear now, washed clean by something bigger than her shame. "I can't make life in my own body, but I can save it. I can help it. I can nurture it." She looked back at the foal. "Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what I'm meant to do." Jessie pulled her into his arms, not caring about the mess, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "It's more than enough. You're more than enough." Tommy cleared his throat. "What should we name her?" "The filly." Clara looked at the little horse, so new and perfect and alive because of her hands. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." 3 months later, Clara stood in the barn, teaching Tommy how to gentle a colt, when Mrs. Calloway's voice cut through the autumn air. "I'm calling for an annulment hearing." Clara's hand stilled on the colt's neck. Through the barn door, she could see the old woman standing in the ranch yard, flanked by 2 town council members. Jessie emerged from the house, his face dark with anger. "On what grounds?" he demanded. "Non-consummation or inability to produce heirs. Montana law allows petition after 90 days. Mrs. Calloway's voice was triumphant. "The town has a right to ensure productive marriages." "Your ranch needs heirs, Jessie. She can't provide them." Clara felt Tommy's hand on her arm, steadying. "Don't listen," he whispered. "She's just mean." But Clara was already walking toward them, her heart pounding but her spine straight. She'd spent 3 months being useful, being grateful, being small in every way except her body. She was done. "I'm standing right here, Mrs. Calloway," Clara said. "If you have something to say about my body, say it to my face." The old woman's eyes glittered. "Very well. You're barren. Everyone knows it. And you're wasting this man's prime years when he could marry a proper woman and have sons." "Our marriage is consummated," Jessie said coldly. "So your petition fails on that ground, but not fruitful. And it never will be." Mrs. Calloway turned to the council members. "Gentlemen, I've done research. There's precedent for annulling marriages where one party concealed infertility." "I didn't conceal it," Clara interrupted. "I told Jessie our wedding night. Before anything happened, he knew. He chose me anyway. Then he made a poor choice that this community shouldn't have to suffer for. When he dies, who inherits? The ranch will be broken up, sold off. I'll inherit it," Tommy said, stepping out of the barn. His voice was quiet but firm. "If they'll have me," everyone turned to stare at the young man. He walked to stand beside Clara and Jessie, his hands clenched at his sides, but his chin up. "What are you talking about, boy?" Mrs. Calloway snapped. "I'm an orphan. Have been since I was 15. Mr. Thornton took me in, gave me a home, taught me everything about ranching." Tommy's voice grew stronger. "And Mrs. Clara, she's been teaching me about horses, about gentling instead of breaking. She's been more of a mother to me in 3 months than anyone since mine died." He turned to Jessie and Clara. "If you'd want me, I know I'm not blood, but if you'd consider, I'd be honored to be your son, to carry on the ranch, to be your family." Clara's breath stopped. She looked at this young man who'd been invisible to her at first, just another ranch hand, but who'd brought her coffee on cold mornings, who'd asked her to teach him her way with horses, who'd called her Mrs. Clara with a respect that had nothing to do with pity. "Tommy," she whispered. Jessie was staring at the boy. No, the young man, with something like wonder. "You'd want that? To be legally adopted? To be a Thornton?" "More than anything, sir," Mrs. Calloway sputtered. "This is absurd. You can't just adopt some stray boy to solve your succession problem." "Why not?" Clara's voice rang out across the yard. "You said the town cares about the ranch being passed down. Here's your heir, trained, hard-working, and willing. What does it matter if he came from my body or my heart?" She moved to stand beside Tommy, and Jessie moved to her other side. 3 people who'd been alone, now choosing to be family. "There are other orphans in Copper Ridge," Jessie added. "Good kids who need homes. We could take in more. Fill this ranch with children who need parents, teach them honest work, give them a future. He looked at Clara. If my wife agrees. Clara thought of the foal named Hope, now 3 months old and thriving. She thought of Sable, who still came to her for sugar and gentle words. She thought of all the broken things she'd helped heal, all the scared creatures she'd taught to trust again. Yes, she said, let's build our family. Mrs. Calloway opened her mouth, then closed it. The council members shifted uncomfortably, because what could they say? The ranch would have heirs. The family would continue. It just wouldn't look the way they expected. This is highly irregular. Mrs. Calloway finally managed. So is trying to destroy someone's marriage because they don't fit your narrow definition of worthy. Clara shot back. My husband wanted a partner. He got one. He wanted to build something real. We're building it. And if that threatens you, Mrs. Calloway, that says more about you than us. The old woman's face went red. She turned on her heel and marched toward her buggy, the council members trailing behind her, mumbling about legalities and paperwork. When they were gone, Clara turned to Tommy. Did you mean it? Every word, ma'am. Then we should make it official. Talk to a lawyer. Do the adoption papers. She paused. But Tommy, you should know. I can't promise I'll be a good mother. I don't know how. I never had one long enough to learn. Tommy smiled. You saved a horse's life with your bare hands. You've been teaching me patience when everyone else just told me to be tougher. You make Mr. Thornton laugh at breakfast. His voice softened. That sounds like a pretty good mother to me. Clara pulled him into a hug, this young man who'd just chosen her when he didn't have to. Jesse wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stood there in the ranch yard, 3 broken pieces forming something whole. That night, after Tommy had gone to the bunkhouse and the ranch was quiet, Clara and Jesse lay in bed talking about the future, about converting the spare room into Tommy's room, about visiting the orphanage in Helena, about building a family from love instead of blood. I was so scared, Clara admitted, when Mrs. Calloway came today. I thought this was it, the moment you'd realize she was right, Clara. Jesse turned to face her in the darkness. I'm going to keep choosing you until the day I die, and maybe even after that, if heaven's real. You understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. You're not broken. You're not barren. You're not any of the words small people use to make themselves feel bigger. He kissed her forehead. You're the woman who saves lives, who gentles wild things, who stood up to the biggest bully in 3 counties and didn't blink. You're a mother to a boy who needed one, even if you didn't give birth to him. You're my wife, my partner, my home. I love you, Clara said. She'd never said it before, scared it would be too much too soon. But it had been true from the moment he'd said, I don't bite unless you ask me real nice. I know, Jesse said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I've loved you since your first letter. When you told me about training a horse named Brutus who tried to bite you 3 times before you won him over. I thought, that's my kind of woman. Stubborn and kind and doesn't give up on the difficult ones. Is that what you are? Difficult, damaged, remember? Deaf in one ear, too soft-hearted for my own good, terrible at saying romantic things. She kissed him, stopping the words. You're perfect, she murmured against his lips. For me, you're absolutely perfect. They made love slowly, tenderly, 2 people who'd learned that broken pieces fit together better than perfect ones. And afterward, as Clara drifted toward sleep, she thought about Hope the foal, about Tommy, their almost son, about all the children they might save, who needed saving. Her body couldn't create life, but her hands could nurture it. Her womb was empty, but her heart had infinite room. She would never be the woman Mrs. Calloway thought she should be. She was something better. She was herself. And finally, impossibly, that was enough. Outside, Montana stars blazed across an endless sky. Inside, a giant mail-order bride and a cowboy who didn't bite, unless asked real nice, dreamed of mornings yet to come, of children's laughter filling empty rooms, of a love that grew not despite their brokenness, but because of it. And somewhere in the barn, a foal named Hope slept beside her mother. living proof that Clara Matheson Thornton's hands could work miracles even if her womb could not.